So, hello everyone, and welcome to this episode CFO 4.0. Now, before we start and I introduce my awesome guest, I am just going to do an apologies in advance in that I have come down with a lovely cold. So, if you're wondering why I'm sounding a little bit snuffly, then I do apologise, and I'm hoping that we get through today's episode with no coughing and spluttering and all of that. The joys of English and Welsh weather. I guess I'm in North Wales, so the Welsh weather, but also the seasons. So on today's episode, really excited to have a return guest. So Hannah Williams, who is the CEO of Alacrity, and she's going to explain what Alacrity is and what it does in a second. But she's here to come back on. She transitioned from a CFO role into a CEO role. We actually had her on to talk about that transition. So we're going to explore that topic, but also talk a bit about team communication, about managing board meetings, and some of those skills that she's gained and developed further as she's shifted in that change of role. So welcome, Hannah. It's so nice to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Han. Thank you for having me back.
No, it's great. And so for all of our guests, yes, you are going to get a little bit confused. There's going to be a few too many Hannahs and Hannahs going around the equation. But for our guests that perhaps haven't heard the previous podcast, can you tell us a little about the organisation that you currently work for, Hannah?
Yeah, of course. So Alacrity is an entrepreneur hub. So we essentially set up digital entrepreneurs. So we bring in, well, it was set up initially to be graduates, but now that's a wider reach because not everyone wants to go to university. And there's a lot of people driven to want to set up their own business, but don't quite know in what sector they want to do it or how to do it. So we put them through a 12-month accelerator program essentially to get them there. We work with industry to find real industry problems. So we partner with different large organizations to help the R&D process within their sector.
Amazing. And so obviously there's a lot we could talk about purpose and that in conversation as well, but just tell me a little bit how you found the transition. Now you're how many months into the role?
So 8 months in, and I think we spoke on my very first day. So I was still in, I guess, CFO mode. But it's slightly different in the way of your sole mission is to set strategy and then encourage the team, which I feel so fortunate. I've got a fantastic team. So I met them just before I started, and now I'm working with them. I love them even more. I learn so much from them every day. We get to build this thing together as we want to do. They've got constant amazing ideas. They're really empowered to go and do. So, the mission's quite broad in the way of we know what we want to do, and we want to encourage the Welsh economy as much as possible and ignite that through the ecosystem and be a main catalyst, I suppose, in that. And they absolutely work the best way to do that. They are genuinely wicked. I feel so lucky. So my predecessor did an awesome job at choosing the team. So my role then it was obviously back at Tiny Rebel, covering finance, HR, sustainability. Here is now everything, but in a different way. It's more governance here because we're a foundation. So you report to a board every 3 months, which I love doing. Bit of a geek in that respect. I love board structure and how that works and the accountability that comes with that. And it's different in the way there's more flexibility, there's more we can do as a team. We all know what our strengths are. And then we just amplify that through different things. So since we spoke, we've launched I call them community aspects, but I suppose they just really ignite and empower and influence people. So we've got the business social, which is an event we put on every quarter. That is, we bring in different entrepreneurs, normally high profile, who have set up a business or been involved in quite a big business. Because if you see something and someone doing something, you can believe that you can go and do that as well. So that's really the emphasis of that. So we've had 2 so far. Phil Dorr from Gymshark. So he was a CFO at Gymshark. He then set up his own business called We Are For Now, which is a consulting business. with a guy called Steve Hewitt, who he was in Gymshark with. They've invested in the likes of Passenger Clothing, AU Vodka. So they're working really closely with them. He was fantastic. And then the second one we did was with Ellie from Calenia, which was a non-alc spirit brand. So again, a very different entrepreneur, female, setting up your own brand essentially.
And so, I guess talking from you personally, it sounds like there's a lot going in the business. Like, what do you wish you'd known going into that sort of transition from CFO to CEO?
I suppose I was a bit naive to it all, really, and I think in hindsight that was a good thing. There wasn't much of a handover with the previous CFO or the old CFO. I was really friendly with him anyway, and it was a really simple transition, I suppose. I knew where the foundation was, but I knew where I saw the potential for it to be in market. So 8 months in, and we're still hammering to get that to where we want to be.
Amazing. And so, if you were talking about someone, so say somebody came to you and said, what advice would you give to somebody that is making that step up from CFO to CEO? What, 8 months in, what would that advice look like? What would you say people need to think about before they make that transition?
Um, I've lived it. I've lived the journey and the difference of the both. We've got a finance team here that I'm also able to oversee and help with more, and assist upskill and train, which I really enjoy. Um, I One of the biggest things is speaking to people that could be mentors. I think has been fantastic for me. We've got and they're in all different shapes and sizes and wherever they are in market. So Phil is one who I just mentioned. Another one who I'd say is a huge mentor for me, or just an inspiration in general, is a lady called Flora, who's one of our trustees. She's absolutely phenomenal. And it's just people like that you can bounce ideas from, because this is a journey, and we've got, as I mentioned before, the most fantastic team that I want to empower, so they can just go off and make decisions knowing that it all aligns with the strategy for the foundation long term.
Awesome. So finding the right mentors, and it sounds like you've really taken advantage of that board structure, that trustee capability as well. So tell us a little bit about, you mentioned that, you've learned a lot more about having, working with a board, having that support. So tell me a little bit about what you've learned there.
It was a lot different to a family board structure that I had back where I used to work. This is more, so this is again a different sort of board, I guess, to a traditional board. We've still got a chairman, we've got our trustees, which would technically essentially be the non-execs, I guess, in a normal world. Um, they're very, very committed, as in they're very, their viewpoint is, I love taking it on board, because it's often not a viewpoint that I would have considered or thought of, which I really value. And we've all got the same mission for the foundation. I've learned that you should definitely use your network in the best, and utilize your network more so, I guess. I didn't do that enough previously, and I've started to do that a lot more now. And the weight of that is significant. Um, there's 6 degrees of separation, which is what my husband always tells me. So someone knows someone who knows someone. And I cannot tell you, Han, how much that is so true that I've realized in the last 8 months. It's unbelievable. But then those people opening doors. And also, one of the first things my dad told me when we were growing up is, be nice to people on the way up, because you'll see them on the way back down. And that's very, very evident as well in different areas.
So actually, there's some lessons to be learned, not just as a CEO, but also, as a CFO, and I guess there's quite a few things in that. So talk to me a bit about how you found the transition from like for profit and, in business to a foundation. Have you like as a, both in the change in role, but have you noticed some key differences and things you would need to think about as you make that transition?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think most businesses or foundations, whatever they are, work essentially the same. Um, a business strives for, if their articles say so, which most do, for shareholder value. Um, unless you're B Corp, and then you look at stakeholder value, which I hugely resonate with, and I think most businesses, if not all businesses, should look to transition to that. Find that really important. I don't think businesses should just be for profit anymore. It should be a stakeholder playing field where they consider the likes of employees, the supply chain, the environment, it's the sustainability, all of those things should come into effect. I think we need to do it sooner rather than later because we're not looking after the world as we should be. Um, but also that's not too dissimilar to what a foundation is. So we've still got not shareholders but stakeholders in the way of we've got our cohort here who we've got to ensure we give as much time, dedication, knowledge, everything we can to build them up to make them as successful as possible, but also our alumni companies still assist them as much as possible because they're part of our legacy as such. But also, we've got a board to report to and we have other stakeholders with regards to mentors we bring in and other companies within the ecosystem. If we perform better within the area and we help those businesses grow and thrive, that just encourages, it's simple economics, isn't it? It just builds up the local area, increased house prices, it brings more skills to the area, that's more jobs, more businesses, and essentially more money.
So what we're talking about there is the fact that, even though the stakeholders themselves are different, actually thinking about what it is that they want from the organization, who those stakeholders are, what they want from the organization, and making sure we're meeting that, but in a slightly different way. So it's less about profitability and more about are we delivering on the value and that they want from this organization. So
Yeah, that's right.
Has it changed how you make decisions, or fundamentally, do you make decisions in the same way you did when you worked in a for-profit organisation?
Oh, that's a good one. So I think decisions are made with the view of the mission in hand. So very similar to what I was previously. It's just doing it in a slightly different way. You're still building essentially a brand. So you want to create brand awareness with regards to Alacrity, doing things like this, going to events, meeting people, that there's nothing like seeing someone, talking to someone, get to know someone, and then you build naturally your network anyway. That will only then in turn help the foundation because people talk to people. So I might say to someone, this is what we do. They might speak to someone else further down the line, like, oh, I know someone that could help you. And it all comes back in that way. I've learned that tenfold over the last 8 months. And that's what I find really important. But with regards to the decision making, that it's very similar. It's still, a lot of communication with the team and the board. So everyone's really aware of what we're doing and that's very clear and transparent. And it's still on target for the mission in hand. And the values are all aligned. That's why, I chose to come here because my values aligned with my new workplace, which I really enjoy, which I get a lot of job satisfaction from. And so all of that is very, very similar to a for-profit business.
And I like that comment about making sure your values align. And I think, that's just something for, I guess, anyone that's thinking about shifting into any role, whether that's a CFO or a CEO, it's a lot easier when your values align with that of the business. And I think that's something, everybody should maybe, if you are looking at either a step up or a step across or, whatever it is making sure that value piece is there. Now, you did say something super interesting earlier. You said you love board meetings. Explain that to me. That's not a reaction that most people have about how you find board meetings, why it's something that you enjoy and how you got there, really.
I like board meetings. I was fascinated by them. So I did my ACCA and I loved understanding structure. So then in lockdown, I did a corporate governance diploma to understand more around the governance of a business or an organisation and how that works. And that a lot of that stems from the board, not just processes and procedures, but how the board functions as well. And I like them because you get insight from different people who have the mission in hand and know if anything's critiqued, it's not personal, it's all for the benefit of the business or the foundation going forward. And that's why I like it. So after one board meeting, I already get my presentation ready for the next one. And then as the time moves on over the 3 months, I can update everything, and it's a nice milestone to see how everything's progressed and moved, and then look back at what we have achieved, but also look forward and what we're able to achieve. And it's building the stepping stones to get to the, I don't know what the ultimate is. I don't know if it'll ever end, but to continue on the journey of personal growth and growth for the foundation. And also massive for the team. I'm really into, I think I mentioned before, continuous personal development. So lots of upskilling training for the team, because what you don't know, you don't know. And the more you can learn, the more you can impart that knowledge. And I find that really important.
So we talk a lot about, board meetings being something you get a lot of value out of. Have you got any tips for anyone about how, whether they're a CEO or a CFO, how they can make those board meetings more valuable to the organisation, and I guess better for the trustees as well?
Yeah, some can be really boring. You can sit in a board meeting. Some we cap hours for time, really, and we do that because you can sit there and you could talk all day but get no value from it. You don't need to know the detail and the minute detail. It's knowing bringing everyone up to speed for me really quickly, as in everyone in the room, the trustees, because they're out of the business. So you need to bring them in, bring them up to speed as an executive part of the team, so they're aware of everything that's going on. And then also really set out the vision for the next quarter, the next 6 months, the next year, and then how they can add value to that. I think what is really important to me is everyone in the room, in that boardroom, should add value at a certain level. And I think it was Elon Musk that said, if you're in a room and you can't add value, just leave. You may as well just go. And that's really important, because if you're just criticizing for no benefit, then you're not helping anything grow or get better or improve. So the key is to ensure that everyone is aligned again with the mission and of what the business or the foundation wants to do, and then how you help each other to achieve that and build on that. So I love board meetings because it holds me accountable to what we've done previously. It also sets the vision for the foundation going forward. I can bring all the trustees up to date with exactly how we are, exactly where we want to go, what processes we're going to improve on, procedures, or what more events are we going to go to amplify that, what are the programs we're going to look at to deliver and to add value to the local, I say ecosystem, local at the moment, but the wider plan is to get more national. And you can only do that through the stepping stones. That isn't going to happen overnight. You need to build on that gradually. So it'll be nice to see in a year's time to review back at all the board meetings, do an annual mop up of where we've been and what's moved in a year, and either pat yourselves on the back or go, okay, brilliant, and then but what can you do next year to make it even better again?
And so, as a CEO, sort of sitting on the other side of the fence with your finance team, what are some of the what are you asking from your finance team? What are your expectations on the other side of the fence?
The finance team here are absolutely brilliant. In the way of they're very meticulous as well. So because we're a foundation, we get audited often through different, not just by one, your normal annual audit. You're audited throughout a process of a program. So that we're mostly audited every month or bi-monthly. So that's a normal 3-day intense audit where the auditors come in, go through everything. And Kat, who heads up our finance team, is absolutely meticulous to the penny. I've never quite known anyone like it, and I definitely wasn't like it in my accounting days. And I learned that way back when I was in an accounting firm training, and I was there all evening looking for like £1 in someone's account. I think it was a car garage's account, and I couldn't find this pound. It was driving me nuts. And the partner walked over, like, why are you even wasting your time? It's £1. But I was like, but it's got a balance. It should, in my head, it should balance. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But then you let go of the immaterial stuff. But what she is brilliant at is following process, especially on the audit side, which is she just fits the role that we needed to do, for sure. And very organised. I've never known someone quite so organised in all my life. Again, that's a brilliant trait of a finance manager is exactly what you want in her.
Amazing. And I think, if you had to say sort of what you think trustees are looking for from your finance, the financial aspect, how does that look in terms of what the trustees' perspective is?
I think I see it as similar to what I want to see. Really, everything timely, firstly, and everything up to date, um, and everything very transparent, and organised. So we've changed a few things since I started because I wanted to make. There's no point in doing processes for process sake. Do it once and try and make as many things fit as possible so you're not duplicating your work and wasting time. And that was a previous issue. You can't do everything and be everything to everyone all the time. So it was trying to streamline as much as possible and be more efficient. Um, and then when it in turn gets presented in a board pack to the trustees, it's very clear and like an idiot's guide, really, so they can see it. There's no ambiguity. It is as it is. The cash flow reconciles back to the bank. The profit and loss for each program is very clear. The forecast is very clear, and that's essentially how it builds then into the year-end accounts. I was able to then pull that together to tie it all back to the year-end accounts. So they were able to have all these bits of paper and then know it added up to this. So it was very clear, which I think they appreciated because not everyone's got a finance background. So you're trying to articulate something to someone who doesn't quite know finance. And what I loved is one of the trustees hasn't got a finance background, and she just said, "Look, can you explain this to me? Can you go through it with me?" And because my background isn't finance, but as soon as I did that, it was like a light bulb went off, and she just because it was so clear, you've got to tailor what you're trying to articulate in a different way to different people because they take it in a different way. Some people like lots of detail and abundance of detail. Some people don't like that. They like short, snappy, bullet points on a presentation, get it done. They don't want to read board packs that are 40 pages long, essays. I certainly don't, and I don't even want to write them. So that's why I do it in a presentation and then have an appendices after with all of the documentation supporting what's in the bulk of the presentation. So they've got 2 weeks before the board meeting, they can go through everything in detail if they want to. They've got enough time to do it as well, going back to that timely measure. They're not sent out, the agenda's not sent out the day before or the week before. It's in enough time to make sure, everyone can feel prepared, have questions prepared, even ask questions in advance. So then it's all, again, communicated and transparent because that's, I feel, the most important thing is that constant communication.
Amazing. And I think that's a great way to balance the need for detail whilst not overwhelming those, but perhaps don't need that level of information. Any other tips and things that you have for people to make board meetings more effective?
Um, I don't know if what I found really easier here is having them scheduled for the year, having a clear structure, time them, which is again a bit weird. But as soon as you do one, the next one gets a lot easier. And that's because you can rein everyone back in when they go off in their tangents. They go in all different directions of what they want to talk about. You can really rein it back in, give enough time at the beginning of the board meeting for everyone to have a coffee and a chat and how's your weekend been, which I don't know if you've done colour profiling. So I'm mostly red with a little bit of blue. So I hate all that chit chat. You probably shouldn't. So I've got to try and get into the mode and really think about asking people because I just want to get in and go through everything that's happened and essentially get the job done and move on to the next thing because my head's already on to the next thing. So give time for that and appreciate each other's values. And that colour profiling thing I did was one of the best things I've done because as soon as people walk in a room, I identify their colour. So I can work out how they want me to speak to them, explain something to them, and how they want the detail, all the information. And people want it in different ways, but that's been very helpful.
So talk, because I've done a few different variants of the color profiling. Tell us a little bit about that, because it sounds like something you're really applying in your sort of day to day world.
Yeah, so I think I was at an airport and I saw this book, Surrounded by Idiots, and I was like, "Oh, that's great." I think it was like a year ago. I was like, "Oh," that intrigued me firstly. And then it talked about the idea of color profiling. So you're either your majority of a color is either yellow, green, red, or blue. So blue is very detail heavy. People who write massive essay emails want to know the detail of everything, need to know all the detail. Um, Not because it's going to change the decision at the end, but they anchor on the detail. They need to know everything. It's not a control thing either. It's just they like checking, double checking, that sort of thing. Red is I say I'm fully red because I read through mine and I was like ticked most of the boxes. So very much um like don't like loads of detail, bullet points. They can get to a conclusion very quickly to what they want to do next. Very much I want to say bull in a china shop, but I think that's just me personally rather than the red in general. Um Very strategic, they are on to the next task before they've even finished this task, and they're headed into the next and the next thing. But I sort of do that at home as well. I'm putting the washing on, making the kids dinner, still answering emails. I'm probably on the phone as well at the same time, mostly with my AirPods in. Still just trying to do a million things at once. Yellow is someone who's very creative. So this person, I know one guy actually, because as soon as I read the characteristics of a yellow, friends with everyone, know everyone, very creative, the bubbliest person in the room, just this huge character about them. But the natural um, default is creative side really. So they could be artistic or literate, very literate, that sort of thing. And then green is a caregiver essentially. So someone who's very warming, normally nurses, teachers, that sort of thing, and very looks after everyone. And the majority of people are green in in the world, I think it is. Um, so a CEO role is normally red generally, but now it's moved. So years and years and years ago, it used to be very red. Now it can be a mixture of things. So you could get, one of our trustees who's a very successful entrepreneur who's just recently exited his business. Um, Unfortunately, he's given his time back to assist us. He is very blue. You can see it from the off. Um, very quiet in a room, but will come up with these absolute golden nuggets of brilliantness, but doesn't talk as much as the red does.
I love that. And I'm pretty sure that I know where I would sit, to be very fair as well. So that's a really interesting piece. What was the book that you read? It had an
It's called
incredible
Surrounded
name.
by Idiot. So it's a great book. Um, and you can do these tests online. So I did it with my finance team before, when I was back at Tiny Rebel, and it gave you a report about you, and mine was just crazy accurate. So you answer about, I suppose, 100 or 200 questions. But how it pulls that information together to understand you was just, it was, yeah, crazy. And it was so spot on for all of us, which was mental. But what do you think you would be?
I think I've got red with a hint of blue, probably. I would say, because I am quite detail orientated. I think I like to know the depth of things, but I'm very much like you. I'm always moving ahead, so I'm always looking ahead to the next piece. So I reckon I'd be a red with a hint of blue.
Yeah, I'll send you the breakdown of it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And what it does then is it works out how you work best with people. So you can understand that person. So you can be more self-aware and because you know what you are. And then you can sort of mold yourself to make sure you're giving everything to the right person. I found it really interesting, really interesting.
No, absolutely. And I did something similar, like not that particular book, but something around that. And it was genuinely interesting. I think when I did those that I came out in that area. So, but it is interesting, isn't it? How you have to adapt your style and I think that was the bit that I took a lot of value from. It was the whole understanding how other people communicate. and,
Yeah.
what my natural instinct is, and trying to almost mitigate my natural instinct to figure out where I need to be to help that person get on the journey. So how else have you applied that? Have you had any examples where it's been really useful to sort of in a real life context?
I think I use it every day. In weirdly, since I need to study it a little bit more. So I read the book, did the sort of the test, knew what I was, and I want to go back and reread it, because then it can change over time with your experiences, and I suppose a little bit of age. Um, I'm guessing that there's a bit more. I'm a bit more compassionate when I look at people, but I very much business focused and task focused as well. Um, so I think I now use it subconsciously a lot more often, Han, and I feel like it's helped me more so shape relationships within the workplace, shape relationships better with my team. So I know what they expect from me, which is more as more important, really. I feel in the position of leading the team, I guess. And it also helps me then communicate back to the board in a better way. So I know how they want me to feed back the information, because sometimes it can be a little bit ambiguous. And I've sat in board meetings and been, you know, want to be half asleep on times, and that's not how it should be. It should be quite dynamic and interesting, and you've got to make these things fun and different, because so people stay engaged. You haven't got a long time to keep their attention, and you don't want to talk for talking's sake either. You want to really go in there with a clear agenda of what you want to get out of it, and be really clear about that. Because I also I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, and people aren't mind readers, which you'd think, you've got to you've got to be really clear about, what you expect from people and what you want from people. And I suppose I've learned that more so now than ever as I'm getting older.
And you talked about structuring the agenda to keep it interesting. How do you manage that? Because obviously some of the content can be a little bit dry, but how do you balance the need to keep people engaged with the fact that obviously you guys have a job to be done and you need to get certain things out of that meeting?
Yeah, so it's again going down to structure and timing it to get everything you want from people. But I do sketch it all out before of trying to get the feedback from our trustees, because they've been successful entrepreneurs, they've been in business, they've seen different things in market. Again, they know that everyone knows people who knows people. So, I'll go in there with a tact of I need this help, or I need, a connection here, or can you give me some advice on this situation? Oh, this is the path I feel like where we should be going now. We're going to continue doing as we're going to do, but we're also going to amplify that by X, Y, and Z. What are your thoughts on it? How do you feel? Because it was taken in the whole foundation in a different direction. So before I started, there was no social media really, no marketing of I call it the brand. We weren't present at as many events in different sectors that I'd like us to have been. So we've changed that now and made it not more young, which is how they describe it, but more relative, I suppose, to people, more interesting, because it was fantastically interesting before, but now we're just communicating that message out. And a lot of businesses don't do that enough. They assume that people know what their business is, but sometimes you've got to try and step out from the internal and look in to see how people are seeing it from the outside. And I love that feedback all the time. And constructive feedback can be really beneficial. So you can't see what other people can see. So if you get that feedback, you can tailor things to be more progressive, I think. That's really important. So that was a big change that's been made, and that's what we want to continue more of. We're also global. So we've got Alacrities in Canada, Turkey, Mexico, France, but nobody knows it, which is crazy. And I didn't even know it before I started. So we've got a wider network, a global network, which we should be pulling on more so. We're a little country in Wales. Well, Wales is a little country, but how do we use that global presence? I guarantee you'll go somewhere and meet someone Welsh, always when you go on holiday, or someone who's got a link to Wales and they love to tell you. So I love that. So everyone's got an affiliation back to Wales. So how do we amplify that and get more leverage from it?
And I guess coming back to then, in terms of asking trustees, how do you manage the balance of getting the feedback from the trustees with the information that you want to give? Like, what's your secret sauce to, and also keeping it within the timeframes? How do you figure out how much time to allow for a particular board meeting or particular section of that?
So some are different. I mean, some of our alumni company board meetings are an hour, and that works. But they have them, every month. Ours are quarterly, and they're for 2 hours. Well, it's about 2.5 hours with the half-hour chit chat in the beginning. 2 hours, and that is to really give the time to where it's needed. But that's my job and the team's job to section out what's important that we want to get through. We don't want to sit and talk about social for an hour. There's a quick graph on the screen to say this is how it's grown, this is our interaction, this is what we're going to keep doing going forward. We've tweaked a few things, but there you are, 5 minutes, move on. You can sit and talk about that for hours, but it's not going to add value back to what we're doing. So the real value added back to what we're doing is looking at our challenges and using the expertise in the room to overcome those challenges. If they've generally been there, done that in a different way. So how do we use that and pull on that to move forward? So that's what they're there for. And also, sometimes the feedback, it can be, again, it's not criticizing you, it's criticizing, it can be, if it's constructive criticism, that's the best way to look at it. It's maybe a little bit uncomfortable on times, especially, when people are asking questions and you're trying to explain it and you've got to explain it in a different way, but then you also forget they're not in the business every day. So they've got 3 months of time and stuff to catch up on. So you're trying to bring them up to speed. So it is again explaining that in detail. And because I'm red, I just assume I can say a sentence in about 3 words and they get it. But again, that evidence like that. So I've had to learn to really talk more and explain in detail so they get it on the off. Otherwise, I'm explaining things 3 times. I think I've learned that from my kids as well. Explain it right the first time.
No, and I think that's a really interesting point about how to take feedback. And how would you describe your because it can be quite you can be quite tempting or quite instinctive to go, that you don't, to resist feedback. How do you find the balance, especially when somebody's maybe giving you good feedback but not in a constructive way? How do you manage that situation?
I was speaking to a guy the other day. I don't know if this was just a female thing, but he was saying, if someone says to his wife, "Oh, you look really lovely," she's like, "Oh yeah, my dress is old," or "Oh, it was only cheap." It's never, "Oh, thank you." I don't know if that's a female thing. So that's that's a compliment, which is essentially feedback. I encourage feedback. I like it. In that, again, that self-reflection thing, I probably need to do it more with the team. A lot of people sort of brush over the good stuff because it's fantastic and they've done a really good job. So, but you should encourage that and reward that in the way of, even just, "That was wicked, thank you so much." But because I'm red, I'm on to the next thing already. So I've got to go back and make sure I do that because it's always a nice thing to do. And a compliment's nothing. It doesn't cost you anything, but it can mean a lot to the person. So feedback in the way of, I don't know, if I go to someone's event, then I message them of how good it was, but also maybe a couple of little improvements, which some people value, but some people don't. Some people just want people around them to just say it's good all the time. But then you don't grow and you don't improve because you just think you're doing everything as it's supposed to be, And I like, again, constructive criticism. You can get a lot of criticism that isn't constructive. and it's not conducive to what you want to do, so what's the point in giving it? If it's constructive and it's, from a good position, and it's independent, and it's not emotional, and it's going to really help that person, then all day give it. And also people should be open to receive it too.
No, absolutely. I think it's just because because of what we do, constant improvement. I'm a massive believer in the power of feedback, but you're 100% right. Like, giving feedback is an art, I think, in itself. And people can have the best intentions, but not necessarily give it in a way that's easy to receive and get it. But that, I think, is almost a topic for a different podcast. And we are rapidly running out of time. So I want to say a massive thank you, Hannah, for coming back on the show and sort of sharing your experience. Obviously, that shift into role, your what you've learned about communication, about building a successful board agenda, and that really drives value for the organisation. And we talked about the power of network. So is there anything that you would like to ask our network? Is there anything that, as an organisation, you guys would value? Perhaps there's somebody listening that might be able to help.
Oh, I just love people reaching out, and I don't think we do that enough. And I learned that when I used to message a guy called Al Barrett from Grenade, and now he's a fantastic sounding board. But I'm messaging randomly on LinkedIn. Same with Phil Dorr, actually. Stalked on LinkedIn, message loads. And actually, people do want to help. People who are running organisations or foundations, or in a CFO, CEO role, are really busy. However, always give time back to give your time back. It comes around tenfold, and that's really important. And I messaged Phil after he came and did our business social, and he was on our podcast. I couldn't explain to him how thankful I was. It didn't sort of cost him anything but his time meant so much to me, and it really did change a lot of what I wanted to do in the foundation, and for a lot of the team as well. You can't buy how happy he made me just by giving his time, honestly. So I think encouraging people to do more of that. And if anyone would like to come and be on our podcast, if they're a founder of a business, because it's called For Founders by Founders, that would be lovely.
Amazing. And thanks, Hannah. So if people want to learn more about Alacrity and what you guys do, where's the best place to find you?
Oh, definitely Instagram. Everything's updated on social. That's a good place. And it just updates with all our events and everything we've got going on. And we're doing a lot of collaborative events at the moment with other organisations. For International Women's Day is one. So rather than doing everything in silos, again, it's trying to bring all these organisations together that you wouldn't think would work together. So we've called this group She Who. So She Who just is kind, empowers, just gets stuff done. Essentially, I don't know where that's going to lead, but it feels like it's a really powerful thing, and it's a really good thing to start getting moving. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, Hannah. And we will put the links to all of the things that Hannah mentioned in the podcast notes. So thank you for sharing your journey so far. And it's exciting to see, what's coming.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. And to all of our listeners, if there is questions you'd like to ask, or things you think I should miss, then constructive feedback is genuinely welcome and asked for. So we'd love to hear what you think about the content that we're producing. And of course, my ask for you guys listening, reviews make a big difference to the success of any podcast. So we'd love to get your, if you've found this episode or any previous episodes valuable, please do pop a review on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple, whether it's Google. It really genuinely does help. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on the CFO 4.0 podcast.